Hello guys, welcome to another video, and in this particular video we're going to take a look at how to build this simple calculator interface using HTML and CSS Grid. So if you are interested in learning how to build this cool calculator interface which you can use in any of your projects, then I urge you to watch this video from the beginning to the end so that you can benefit a lot from this new technology in CSS called CSS Grid. So without wasting much of your time, let's get into it. So I have gone ahead and launched Sublime Text, and inside it I have a folder with the name of calculator opened, and we are going to go into the folder and we're going to create a new file. So we want a new file which is going to have the name of index.html. So we save it and we have an HTML file to work with. Now in this particular video also I'm going to be using embedded CSS, and that is because this project is a very small one, so we don't need to have an external CSS file. So let's quickly generate a very basic HTML boilerplate, and in the title we are going to have calculator. Let's save this. Now inside the body tag or element is where we are going to be working most of the time. So let's go into the body tag, and basically our calculator is going to have a container div, and inside the container div we are going to have a screen and the buttons. So let's go ahead and create that. So we are going to have a div with a class of container. So container, and inside this div with a class of container we are going to have two different divs. The first div will have the class of screen, and I'll just type in a 0 here. Then our second div will have a class of buttons. So inside this div with a class of buttons is where we are going to put all our individual buttons for the calculator's functions. So we are basically going to create buttons, and we are going to use CSS Grid to style them up. So I'm going to have button, and we are going to tab out, and this button is going to have a text of C, that is for cancel. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to copy this, and we are going to need 19 different buttons. So I'm going to simply paste them. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So the first button will have the text of C for cancel. The second button will have an opening bracket, and then the third button will have a closing bracket. Our fourth button is going to have the plus sign for addition. Then we come and start again. So the fifth button will have 7. From 7 we go to 8, then we go to 9, and then we go to the subtraction sign. Then from there we go to 4, and then to 5, and to 6, and then we go to the division. Then from there we go to 1 and 2 and 3, then to the multiplication sign. Then we go to point, and then 0, and then we have our equal to button. So the cancel button and then the equal to button are going to be styled differently from the other buttons. So for this reason I'm going to assign the cancel button an ID of cancel, and I am also going to assign the equal to button an ID of equal to. And so now that we have all this out of the way, let's go ahead and we are going to preview this in our browser. So I'm going to head over to my web browser, and let's reload this. And as you can see, we have the content that we created in the HTML rendered in the browser. Now this is not obviously what we hope to achieve, but then we can style it up using CSS. So let's head over to Sublime Text, and we are going to start off with the styling. So let's go to our head tag, and below the title tag I'm going to have style. And so the first thing we are going to style is our container. So I'm going to target the div with a class of container, and I'm going to give it a padding 8 pixels all around, and we're also going to give it a background color of 0D101, and then we are going to have a B and save this. So let's go back to the browser, reload, and as we can see, our background color has been applied. Now I forgot to do this. Let's reset the browser's default margin and padding. So before the container CSS rule, I'm going to have an asterisk for everything within the page. So I'm going to say margin, not margin top, just margin, and I'm going to set the margin to 0 pixels, and we'll also set the padding to 0 pixels. Let's save all of this, go back to the browser, reload, and as you can see, all the margins and paddings have been cleared, and that's good. That's what we want. So let's head over, and what I'm going to do next is, in this same CSS rule, I am going to apply a color to everything. So our entire calculator, whether it's a button or the screen, they are all going to have the same colors. So the color is going to be a hex code. So we are going to have C0CAEB. Let's save this, go back, reload, and as we can see, our colors have been applied. Alright, so the next thing we are going to do is to give our container a width of, let's go with 300 pixels. Save this, go back, reload, and that is what we have. And let's go on. So now that we have our container styled, let's go and now style our screen. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to target the div with the class of screen. And what we are going to do first of all is to give it a background color of a hex code, so hash 1D212E. Let's save this, go back, reload, and as you can see, the color has been applied, but it's just that it's not all that clear. Now another style we want to apply here is to give it a padding of, let's go with 10 pixels all around, and I also want to give it a font size, so a font size of 1.5 ems. So let's save this, reload, and as you can see, everything is getting into shape. So we have our screen done. Now what I'm going to do is, my screen is going to have another style, which is going to be a margin bottom. So margin bottom of, let's go with 10 pixels, so that it pushes all my buttons 10 pixels down. So let's reload this, and we have achieved that. Now it is time for us to style our buttons. So I am going to use CSS Grid to do that. So if we go back to our container element, and inside our buttons, we basically have a div with a class of buttons, and inside that div we have individual buttons. So I'm going to grab these buttons here, copy it up, then we go inside here, we are going to have a div with a class of buttons. We are going to say display grid, and then we are going to say grid template columns is going to be 1FR, 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 and 1FR. So basically we are going to have 4 columns. So all our buttons are going to be arranged into 4 columns. So let's save this, go back, reload, and as you can see, we have 4 different columns. We have column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. Before we continue with the styling, I just want us to also apply a gap between all our buttons. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to say grid column gap is going to be, let's go with 5 pixels and save this. Go back, reload, and as you can see, our columns now have gaps. Now we're going to do the same thing to our rows. So now that we have a gap of 5 pixels for our columns, we're also going to have a gap of 5 pixels for our rows. So let's do that quickly. And this is also going to be grid row gap, which is also going to be 5 pixels. Save this, go back, reload, and now we can see that things are getting into shape nicely. So before we actually get into styling the buttons, I want to stretch the equal to button to fill up this empty space here. And if you remember, we gave it an ID of equal to over here. So I'm going to copy it up. Then below our buttons, I'm going to say class of equal to, and then we're going to say grid column, and this is going to have a span of 2. meaning it's going to span over 2 columns. So the current column it is in, and then the next empty column. So we'll go back to the browser, and once I reload this, if everything works well, we are supposed to have this button here stretch itself from this particular column to the next column. Let's reload. And nothing happens, and that is because for our button it was an ID, and when I came to apply the style, I rather used a class. So I'm going to change this to an ID, save this, go back to the browser, reload, and now we can see that it stretches from this particular column to the next one. So now we are going to apply a little bit of padding to our buttons, and also apply some background color and I think some border around them. So let's go here, and inside our buttons we are going to have a padding. So I'm going to go here and say buttons is going to have a background color of hex code of 060916. Let's save this, go back to the browser, reload, and we can see this. And then now we are going to remove the border around the buttons. So I'm going to say border equal to 0 pixels. Save all this, go back to the browser, reload, and now our borders are gone. So the next thing we need to do is to apply some paddings to our button. So let's go back here, and we're going to have padding of 5 pixels all around. Save, reload. And now everything is getting into shape. I mean, we can increase the padding a bit to, let's go with 10 pixels. Save this, and let's reload, and I think now it looks better. So our cancel button is going to be specially styled, and that is why I gave it the ID of cancel. So let's go and grab them. We're going to change the color of that particular button to orange. So let's go here, and mind you, it's not a class but an ID. So ID of cancel is going to have a color of orange. Let's save this, go back to the browser, reload, and as you can see, our cancel button has a color of orange. Now when we hover on the buttons, nothing happened. That's one thing. And the other thing too is, anytime we hover on the buttons, we want the mouse cursor to change to a pointing hand. So let's go and fix that. So we go to the buttons, and we are going to say cursor of pointer. Save this, go to the browser, reload, we hover, now it's a pointing hand, as we can see. Let's go back and continue. And so the next thing we are going to do is basically copy this, and then we're going to paste it below here, and we are going to say that anytime we hover on the button, we want to change the background. So I'm going to remove all this because we don't need them. So we are going to change the background color to 0B112C. Let's save this, go back to the browser, reload. So as you can see, anytime I hover on any button, a different color has been applied to it. Now I want to rather use a transition so that the hover color transitions smoothly to change to the different color that we want. So let's do that quickly. And so we are going to simply add a transition here, transition, and we are going to have background color. I mean, I could just do all, and then we'll have ease, and then 0.2 seconds. Save this, and when we go back and reload this, and so as we can see, when we hover on any button at all, the background color simply transitions from the dark blue black color to a lighter blue black color. So that is what we want. Now the last thing we are going to do for our buttons is to add an active event, so that anytime we click on the button, the color is changed back to the original one. So let's go back to the styles, and I'm going to copy this and paste it below, and I'm going to change this hover to active. And so anytime we click on the button, that is when this active style is going to take effect. So I'm basically going to have the same color as this, copy, and we'll paste it here, save, go back to the browser, reload, and so we have our hover color. We click, you can see our active color. So everything is working according to the way we want it. So this is how easy it is to build a calculator interface with CSS Grid. I know this is a very basic interface, but then you can style this any way you so choose, because there are a lot of things you can do with what we've just done. You can improve on it and use it in any of your projects. So guys, that is basically all for this video, and if you enjoyed this video, I urge you to click on the subscribe button so that you will be notified anytime I release a new video.